What's up everyone, this is Aaron. I'm here with the Inmotion V9 and I'm going to be doing a tire change on it. I'm going to be doing all the work, but Albert's behind the scenes and he's going to be filming all the close-up shots. In order to do this, you're going to need a few tools. So you're going to need your tire spoons to take the tire off the rim. You're also going to need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, and you're going to need a 3mm and a 4mm hex bit. Other tools and miscellaneous that I forgot to mention: a 5mm hex bit, a ratchet, bit holder or power tools, a torque wrench, blue thread locker, air compressor to seat the bead, air pump to inflate the tire, and optionally you could use some dish soap to help with tire reinstallation. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to put our wheel on its side. Alright, first we're going to remove the screws on the bottom. They are 3mm hex drive. All right, next we're going to take off this protective cover. These screws are actually 4mm hex. And then we'll put this to the side. All right, and we don't actually have to turn our wheel over. We can access all these from the bottom here. So we're going to take the other 2 4mm hex screws out. And we're going to switch bits to our 3mm again. I'm going to come back to those at the end. And the last 2 that hold on the protective cover. Now that we removed all the screws on the bottom, we're going to stand the wheel up so that we could take the side covers off. Now we're going to remove the 3mm hex screws that hold on the side cover. And the ones that hold the top of the kickstand on are very long. Now we move on to the other side so we can take the last screw out of the kickstand so we can remove it. And then it just pulls straight away. We'll put that to the side. Now we'll take out the remaining 2 screws. Now we could take the side panels off. All you gotta do is just pull a little bit away from the wheel and then lift up when it comes completely undone. There you go. Now we can pull off the other side. Same thing, just pull a little bit away from the wheel, and then you just have to lift up. We could flip the wheel over again. Okay, now we're going to remove the pedal bracket. There are 4 4mm hex screws that hold it in above the pedal, and then there's another 2 that hold it in below the pedal. Also, quick tip, it can be tricky to get these other 2 screws out with the pedal folded down, but if you fold it up, it actually gives you access to those 2 middle screws. Now all you have to do is just pull the pedal bracket away from the wheel. And same thing, we just pull it straight away from the wheel. There you go. Also, quick tip, this little rubber grommet fits in this circle here on the wheel and it can be a little tight. So just to get it out, you just want to wiggle the pedal bracket and pull at the same time, and it should come out really easily. Inmotion wanted to make tire changes easier, so they gave us 4 access holes for the motor bolts so you don't have to disassemble anything else. Okay, now we're going to remove the 4 5mm hex screws that hold the motor in. That's one way to do it. But wait, there's more. Oh, I could get that one out with a magnet. Also, it's not a bad time to use a magnet to get these screws out the rest of the way. Another cool thing Inmotion did is they added a quick disconnect for the motor cable down here, so you don't have to do anything above on the wheel. All right, so I'm going to disconnect that. All you got to do is just pull it away from the wheel and then just pull the two halves apart. Okay, now that we have the two halves of the motor cable apart, just be a little careful with the pins here so that you don't bend or break them when you're disassembling the rest of the wheel. Now we can remove this screw here that holds the motor cable in. It's a number 2 Phillips head screw. Okay, on to the next step. Okay, lastly, we're going to remove the last 4 5mm hex screws that hold the motor in. Also, something to note, Inmotion makes sure to put Loctite on all their screws, including the motor bolts, as you can see here. Last step, there is one more motor cable tie behind here, and there's a hole to access it. This is also a 3mm hex screw. We figured it's easier to remove the motor cable on its side. So just guide the cable as you're pulling the motor straight down. Just gotta make sure the cable's being routed properly. There you go. And we'll just start lifting and pulling it away. Just being careful with that motor cable. And we're out. Since we're working on a workbench and we have a gap here in the middle, it'd be best if we put the cable down the middle so that it's not getting pinched. Okay, now we're gonna let all the pressure out of the tire. You could either use a valve core removal tool, or you could just put like a small object like a screwdriver in here and press on the pin here to release all the air. That was quick. All right, now to try to break the bead, we're just going to use our palms of our hands and press on the outer edges of the tire. Okay, now we're going to flip it over and break the bead on the other side. Same thing, just use your palms. Now we're going to flip it back over one more time so our motor cable's not in the way. And we can use our tire levers to pull the tire off. Okay, real quick tip. This makes tire changes way easier. There is a spot in the rim. They call it the drop center. Here, I'll light it up. In the middle of the rim. And to remove the tire, you're going to want to shift one side of the tire. You're going to pinch it and shift it into that drop center. Just like this. So I'm pinching it and then I'm going to push it into that drop center. When you do that, it creates space on the other side of the tire so that you can remove it around the rim much easier. Now we're going to use our tire lever to do that. Since this is tubeless, you don't have to worry about pinching your inner tube when you're removing the tire. So just put your tire spoon in and pry it up. Then we're going to use our second tire spoon. Same thing, start a little bit further over and pry up. And if you have a third tire lever, that's a good time to use that one. Boom, there you go. From here, we could work the tire with our hands. And same thing, use the drop center a little bit on one side to help you pull it over the rim on the other side. Wrong way. Let's try that again. Leave this in the video. All right, we're gonna try 2 tire spoons, a little bit spaced out from each other. I'm making this so much harder than it needs to be. I'm flipping it the other way because I'm a genius. Gonna separate the halves. It's harder than it looks. Albert, how would you do this? And if you're not sure if you could do it by yourself, ask a friend. Thanks a lot, Albert Kua. So the tire that comes on the V9 is directional, and your motor cable comes out the right side of the motor. We have the cable facing down right now, so we also need to put the tire facing down. But before we do that, another pro tip. To make tire installation easier, it's helpful to have some dish soap, and you rub it around the edges here of the outside and on the inside of the tire, just a little bit, so that it can slide onto the rim easier. All right, now that we have our dish soap on the tire, we're going to start installing it. I'm gonna stick to wheel reviews because I suck at this. There you go. One side on, and now we're gonna start using the drop center to put the rest of it on. So we'll push one side of the tire on. And then we're gonna pinch it and push the tire up into the drop center so that we can work the rest of the tire on. So if done correctly, with a little bit of lubrication, you could put the tire on without tire levers, but tire levers will probably make it a little easier to install. So now we have to seat the bead. In order to do that, we're going to need an air compressor. If you don't have one, you could go to a local gas station, and all the wheels do come included with this extra extension piece that will allow you to use any pump at any gas station to seat the bead. Cool. Now that we seated the bead, we got to put back in our valve core. And you don't want to over tighten this, just get it snug and that's it. Okay, now we're going to put pressure in our tire. We're going to put 32 PSI. How does your pump work? Don't forget your valve stem cap, and we can put this back in the wheel. Okay, first we're going to guide our motor cable into the hole here. Now that we have it guided in, we could start lining it up. The motor brackets have these little lines on each side, and you want to make sure to guide those and line them up parallel while you're pushing the motor in. Keep guiding the motor cable and then keep pushing the motor in. Don't forget to line up your wire clip on the motor cable. Okay. And then we're going to put our screw in to hold it in place. It's just a 3mm hex screw, one of many on the wheel. Now we'll put it in our other cable tie. This one is a wood screw. Don't over tighten it, just snug. So to make sure you're installing the motor cable correctly, there is an arrow on both sides, and you just want to line those up. And as you can see, they're lined up. Now you know you installed it correctly. Now we're going to reinstall the motor bolts. First, we're going to add some thread locker, and then we're going to just tighten them in by hand. And then finally, we're actually going to torque them to spec, which is 16 Newton meters. You don't want to use a lot. You just want a little bit on there. Only need just a little bit. And then we're going to use our 5mm hex tool and just line them up and tighten them by hand. Now that we started tightening it by hand, we're just going to tighten it loosely all the way until it gets a little snug. That's it. We're going to wait to fully torque these down until we've already put in the other bolts on the other side. So we're going to lift the wheel up and turn it over. Now we can torque the motor bolts. We have our torque wrench set to 16 Newton meters, and we're going to start tightening them now. There you go. Once you hear the click, that's it. That's all you go. You don't want to tighten it too fast, otherwise you'll get an inaccurate reading. So just nice and slow. And last one. There you go. Now we'll flip it over and we'll torque the other side. There you go. There you go. And we're done torquing the motor bolts. While we're here, we're gonna reinstall the pedal hangers. So there's that rubber bushing again. You wanna line that up with the circle. And then just press down and it's in place. Now we're gonna Loctite those bolts and install them. So you just wanna hand thread them in the first few turns to make sure that they are not misaligned. And then we're just gonna tighten them until they're snug. You don't have to worry about a specific spec for the pedal brackets. So we're going to continue working on this other side. We're going to put on the other plastic panel. Okay, another tip, when you're reinstalling the side pieces, you'll know which side goes where because there's a nylon spacer on the back side of each side. Okay, so when you're reinstalling them, you need to get these little pieces beyond the holes here on each side. So you're just going to line that up. And then just slide it down toward the bottom of the pedal and they push in place. Now we can reinstall our 3mm hex screws. Let's go. Also, make sure that you're not over tightening these. They only need to be snug, not super tight. We're going to reinstall our protector brackets. It's 2 3mm screws on either side. Just 2 more screws on the bottom. And now we're going to swap out for our 4mm hex driver and install the last 2 screws. These I tighten a little more because it's metal on metal. Now we're going to flip our wheel back over and work on the other side. Same thing, line up the circle here. And now we're going to make sure to Loctite these bolts as well. And we'll take our 4mm hex driver and tighten these. Now we can put our other side panel on. And you want to just squeeze the front and back so it snaps in. And we can put our screws in. Putting our other protector bracket on. And lastly, our 4mm hex screws. Now we can put our kickstand on. Just snaps into place. The screws on the side are these long screws, 3mm head. And the bottom one is the short 3mm. And for the final screw, we just need to flip it over one more time. And that's it. You just did a tire change on your Inmotion V9. I think it's good.